Good morning. I'm your host, Ted White, for the Leveled Up podcast. I'm here today with Ned Fasullo, soon to be three-time MSP founder and a seller. Well, two-time founder, soon to be three-time seller. Ned is going to help us unpack what's changing in the changing in the MSP world and what owners and tech companies need to know when it comes to the death of Tier 1. Ned, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Ned, when we talked last time, you kind of opened my eyes to a number of different things that AI might be, how it might be impacting the Tier 1 setup with MSPs and their service offerings. Can you explain?
Well, in a nutshell, I'm probably one of the few that I know that is in the MSP world that believes this, but it's a theory that I've held for the past probably year and a half as AI has just, taken over everybody's mindset and lives for better or worse. But about 3 years ago, we started to see elements of AI creeping into the remote monitoring and management systems that MSPs rely on for tier one support. And I started to kind of put the pieces together to see where down the road these MSPs are going to eventually watch their tier one support desk positions dry up. The main reason being is because between the operating systems, which 90% of the world is Microsoft, and their announcement of integrating AI into their operating systems for self repair, for self ticketing, and things like that. And then you look at how the very platforms that MSPs are dependent on are also coming on the other side and integrating automated ticket response, automated ticket remediation. The writing is on the wall that as a person, if I were a tier one help desk person, I would start to do everything in my power to become a tier two or a tier three. The basic premise behind my theory is that we have probably 4 to 5 years, best case scenario, and I think tier one help desk as a piece of an MSP business is gone. I don't think there'll be people manning the phones or manning the incoming tickets at all because I think that the AIs will basically take that heavy lifting off and leave the tier two, tier three type stuff to more fully developed engineering teams, highly skilled network telecommunications engineers and cybersecurity professionals.
Interesting. So, if you are interested, if you're a candidate getting out of some type of a program, a two-year college, or you got a certification, you want to jump into the MSP world, the infrastructure IT, where would be a good place to start if it were not tier one?
Well, I think the problem is that and this is limited to my experience with the community college and technical college systems here in Louisiana, is that they are consistently, as are the major colleges. I don't want to just label communities, but even your LSU's, your larger, systems. They're not. They're way behind the curve on teaching technology driven education for either associates or 4 year degrees or whatever it is. They've never, ever been on the cusp of any of it. They've always been years behind. um, any MSP owner will tell you hiring a kid out of college with an ISDS degree or something of that equivalent is like hiring somebody with no experience for the most part. A lot of the colleges and educational systems are fascinated with coding. Everything's coding, coding, coding. Well, what happens when AI writes the code for you? So once again, we've set ourselves backwards because technology's change envelope is moving exponentially where we're not able to keep up with it from an education perspective. I would tell any young people interested in education to pursue studies in cybersecurity, and not just the actual coding elements or mechanical elements, but the methodologies as well. And then on the other side, the thing that still makes all of this work is telecommunications, network routing, switching, all those kinds of things that create the highways for this traffic to traverse on. That's where I would tell anyone associated with that or wanting to pursue that to follow those paths, because those paths are immutable. They're not going to change a whole lot. Um, they're going to get a little more complex probably, but there's still going to be a large need for the human element in those areas.
Interesting. Kind of like HVAC, something that's not going to go away anytime soon. Right? Somebody
Mm.
has to come into a house and has to
Yeah.
maintain systems, and that cannot be replaced with automation or AI
Well, if
at
you
all.
take a whole different industry, let's say we looked at companies that do building and facilities maintenance. There are facility automation technologies out there and things like that. But to your point, things like refrigeration, HVAC, security, physical security on top of that, those still require a large amount of human element. There's not going to be a lot of automation platforms that can, other than tell you, hey, your refrigeration is offline. There's nothing that's going to fix that. That still is going to require a skilled technician. So if you look at that as a correlation, you're looking, think of, networking, switching, routing, bandwidth, monitoring, metering, and then the physical security elements along with the cybersecurity elements. You are still talking about, I mean, again, AI can't go and hang a camera for you. It can't install access control on a door, but those are the things that are have a much larger longevity in terms of the human element, as opposed to a ticket coming into a help desk because somebody can't open Word or somebody can't connect to a printer, or you know some other part or piece of that computer which is not working properly, that an AI could very easily diagnose and try and attempt to fix.
Hmm. It's amazing how far along the service and trade industries have come along even over the last 30 years. The trade was hot 26 years ago, and it's just gotten even better. So with that, if you were to talk to somebody who was in high school and they knew they were interested in technology, what type of a path would you recommend that they choose? What type of certifications?
I mean, anything dealing with and I'll just rest on the Cisco type certifications, but I mean, obviously, all of your A plus stuff, your CCNP, CCNA, any of that stuff in the networking world, and they're all labeled differently for different organizations. HP calls it one thing, Cisco calls it another. Excuse me, but I would say anything in the realm of actual. And again, we used to call this telecommunications. Now we call it IT, but technically it is still telecommunications backbone. So anything to do with with bandwidth, incoming or outgoing, routing, switching, anything that makes network traffic flow, anything that monitors network traffic, anything that controls it, that can disperse it, um, and tying that into external internet sources like satellite, anything like that. Highly valuable skill set there. And if you look at companies, especially in the southeast of the United States, they're not looking for people on tier one. They are desperate for people who are tier two and tier three on the scale of networking and cybersecurity and physical security. You ask any MSP from Houston to Florida, they will tell you that the shortage in manpower and workforce is there. It is not at the tier one level.
Agreed. Agreed. Absolutely. So if you are an MSP, let's say you've been in business 30, 40 years, what's your first bit of advice to those MSPs?
I think all owners of MSPs have to begin to reevaluate their business model. I think that the term MSP has been used very loosely since the early 2000s. I mean, back then you had guys running around installing log me in on people's computers telling them they were an MSP, versus people who were using the platforms of the time, like the SolarWinds, the Kaseya's, things like that. They were actually proactively trying to monitor things. However, back then, the computers weren't at a place where they are today. The operating systems weren't quite there. So now you're in this mashup of highly advanced operating systems for Windows, and Macs, of course, Linux, things like that. You've got these highly advanced RMMs that have AI built into them. As an owner, I start to ask myself, why do I have more people on my help desk than I have who can handle actual core networking and security issues for my clients? And I don't think that that change happens today. I do think, though, that over the next 2 to 3 years, the smart MSPs who want to leverage themselves for acquisition in a different way than just the same old, BS of X times, EBITDA, whatever, but who can present their company as a almost fully automated tier one operation with higher level tier two and tier three guys who are making an impact in those customers' accounts. And that means those customers are signing longer term contracts. That is where I would be focused.
And
100%. And it's not to say that I'm not focused on that right now in our own firm. Um, Looking at ways that this tier one AI revolution is going to affect, especially us being this is my third MSP. This is smaller than any other MSP that I've ever had. And I think in particular, the smaller guys will benefit from this because the larger MSPs that are doing, 5, 10, 15 million a year in revenue already, they already have a nice complement of that tier two, tier three thing, right? That element. What they will be doing over time, more than likely, is either elevating their tier one guys through training and certification or cutting them loose because they're going to find that they're going to be carrying payroll weight that they don't need.
mhm. So it's going to be even more important and crucial going forward for MSPs to hire candidates that have that willingness to learn more, that have that innate
Oh, absolutely.
curiosity. Yeah.
Absolutely. The ones who are just they want to sit on a help desk and run tickets, those guys are dinosaurs. They're already extinct and they don't know it.
Hmm.
They need to become self-aware and realize that if they don't make a change, somebody's going to make it for them. Now, the flip side of all this for the larger MS or the smaller MSPs is as you begin to go down this path, you realize that tier two and tier three guys are much more expensive in terms of human capital. So you have to look at your pricing models today as well as how that's going to integrate into your plan because I think a lot of smaller MSPs, especially in the Southeast, are going to have to start to look at raising their rates, but providing a better deliverable to a client.
Definitely. I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. How do you feel that AI could be integrated into the MSP's service?
I mean, right now it's already integrated. If you're using any of the major RMM platforms, there's some element of AI already built into the ticketing side of things. Um, as far as the rest of it, it would be interesting to see how some of those platforms like, ConnectWise, Autotask, Atera, how they start to implement AI across the project management side of the platform, the billing side of the platform, things like that. That remains to be seen. I don't think any of them are there yet from what you can see just in the platforms. But that will be another interesting piece of it, which I think is further down the road in terms of how that works.
Interesting. So bottom line, tier one, if you're an MSP and you have tier one service, you might want to take a good look at that to see if there's some potential upgrades in that arena. And if you're on the candidate side and you're looking to get into the MSP world or you're already there, take an aggressive approach to learning and extending your career into more of the path that might involve networking and cybersecurity and certifications along that route. Do you have any other takeaways, Ned, before we end the show here?
I mean, I would say that the world of MSP acquisitions is probably going to be rapidly changing as well during the next 5 to 10 years, if not sooner. I think you're going to see that old model of X times EBITDA, which is a standard model for business acquisition. It's not unique to technology, right? But I think that you're going to find that the ones that can make these transitions, they'll be able to lower their overall payroll costs, but they'll be able to show a higher value in the company that they're selling, right? Because they're going to look at the person doing the acquisition hopefully sees a much more mature and developed company using AI in a way that perhaps other candidates for acquisition are not, and seeing that there is a level of stability in that acquisition that may not, appear in others. So I think that you're gonna have these two or three tracks running parallel to the future in terms of, how these companies run, how they're positioned, and then the people doing the acquisitions. The PEs, the venture capital firms, really need to get up to speed on this, or they're going to find themselves making acquisitions that aren't possibly the best, for their portfolio.
Interesting. A lot of good takeaways here. You have takeaways for the MSPs, you have takeaways for the candidates, and you have takeaways for the PE firms.
Well, I try. It sounds like some of it sounds like bad news, but it's really not. I think all of it's opportunities. And I know several MSPs that are, in the Gulf South. I know people trying to sell them right now, positioning for acquisition. I know that our own MSP is interested in being acquired at some point, in the next year or two, three, whatever that looks like. And we're kind of in the middle of this right now, addressing, getting through this year and addressing what our future looks like and where we're going to do some things very differently next year in terms of staffing and also the types of clients we acquire. I think that, all MSPs in the Southeast are, I'd say Louisiana to Alabama at the very least, we have the largest concentration of micro businesses probably anywhere in the country. And that's your mom and pops that are 2 to 5 employees, and they need help just like everybody else. But from a budgeting standpoint, they are hard to sell to, and any MSP owner will tell you that. So I think how MSPs sell and who they sell to, who they target, those things are going to have to change as well across the board. I think that ironically, what this is going to do as well in the end is going to open up that break fix market again for those guys that love running around putting their hands on machines for those little small mom and pop businesses. I think that there's going to be a little bit of a resurgence in that.
Interesting. Very good. Ned, very eye-opening podcast here. Do you have any last words, any last bit of
No, no,
advice?
not at all. Appreciate being on. Happy to help, and always available.
Excellent. For the folks listening, Ned Fasullo, again, thank you, Ned, for joining the Leveled Up podcast.
Thanks.